All right. Good afternoon, everybody listening in and joining us online today as well. So it's another Tech Talk Day with me, Kazeem. And today we're going to be talking Azure Functions and API Management. I mentioned it earlier that today is going to be a little bit more for the developers now. Um, today I'm not alone on the show as usual. So I've got Brian with me on the show today. Hi, Brian, and welcome to the Tech Talk Show.
Hey, Kazeem, thank you so much for having me.
Okay, all right. So before we delve into the business of the day, Brian, let's meet you. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Brian.
Sure, thanks again for having me. So my name is Brian Gorman, and you can find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. BL Gorman is Twitter, and LinkedIn is Brian L. Gorman. But I am a .NET developer by trade. I've done that since it first came out way back in the day, early 2000s when .NET 1 was out there. And so I've been in the ASP.NET MVC space recently, and then of course now moving into more Angular stuff and all that jazz as we have evolved. But I'm in the Azure space as well. I've been recently awarded as an Azure MVP, and so that was a really cool honor to get. But with that, I've also got a few Azure certifications around the developer and the admin side of things. And then I'm an MCT as well. So I do some technical training and help you get certified with Azure certifications.
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. So let's kick things off with API management first. So what is Azure API management, and what are some of the common use cases, for API management?
Yeah, it's excellent question. So API management, so API is application programmer interface basically. And the API management is a platform solution at Azure that you can use to essentially build a public facing facade for all of your API endpoints that you want to expose. And that gives you a common URL that you can give to all of your customers that they can hit the endpoint. And when they hit that endpoint, then based on whatever route they send to your endpoint, you can direct them to different backend APIs that you've built, whether that's a web API project that you're hosting at Azure or an Azure function project that you're hosting at Azure, or it could even be a third party URL that you have no control over, but you're just basically leveraging within your own facade to let them hit those and get the data that they need, and they can all get it from one place. Now also with API management, you're given the ability to add some things like subscriptions and products, so you can delegate things like how many requests per minute you would like to allow a customer to make, or you can do things like group APIs together and sell that as a product, and then further give access to that product at different levels of subscriptions.
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you very much.
Mhm.
I'm sure there are a number of moving parts, right, that makes up the API management system. So what are those very important components of the API management system that you feel that people should know about?
Yeah. So absolutely, the most important thing, obviously, you'll deploy your API management into Azure, and once you do that, you're going to create APIs, and that's kind of be the backbone of what the API management is where these APIs are that you're building, and within the APIs, you get operations, and each operation is a separate endpoint, and you can do get and post requests on an operation. So you can make multiple operations that either just allow people to read data or actually send you data back. So those are the operations. And then what you do is you group those APIs that you want to give to customers into products. So we started out, we created an API, we added in some operations for that API, and now we have multiple APIs hitting different aspects of our internal systems. And we want to say this customer can only do these operations on this API. We can do that through a product. And then ultimately on each product that we create, that groups together what we're selling to them or giving them access to. And then on those products themselves, we have those subscription levels. And those subscription levels can give them direct access to the product that gives them access to the APIs, which gives them access to the operations, kind of that stair stepping like kind of hierarchy. And then within that, using that subscription, that's how we can then do request limiting and rate limiting. Um, in addition to all of that, of course, you got application insights on the back end to track everything that's going on, and yeah, you can integrate with other Azure services really easily. So
Taking a look at application insights, right? I know application insights play a major role, I believe, in API management, if I'm correct. So for the benefit first of those who doesn't know much about application insights, so let's start with a summary definition of what application insight is and what role does it play when it comes to API management.
sure. So application insights is a built-in platform service as well at Azure that you get kind of basically for free on almost any of your services. You do need to build an application insights instance that you're going to leverage within, specifically within API management, or you could use it on an Azure function or an Azure website. Uh, Basically, it's all of the metrics that you're going to have around things. So if I end up having a virtual machine I've deployed and I want to see, how much CPU usage I'm using or how many, whatever it might be, metrics about the disk usage or requests to it or whatever it might be, Application Insights is going to have that data available for me, or at least the Azure Monitor would be, excuse me. But then within my applications, such as my websites or my Azure Functions, that's where my application insights gives me data like how many requests are happening against my website or against my APIs. So as I bring that into API management, I can then see, I've had 100 requests in the last minute or 5,000 requests in the last half hour or whatever it is. And so you can use that application insights to see what's happening kind of real time, as far as like requests and other metrics that you want to track. And then you can also ultimately go back and you're storing the application insights data in a log analytics workspace. So that allows you to go back with Custo queries and do some postmortems on things. So you could run some queries to see, what happened that led up to our API stopping to work at 3 p.m. yesterday or whatever it might be. So you could look into, the number of requests you were getting in that hour leading up to it, or if somebody sent some data that maybe was odd or something, you might have that available.
Okay, thank you. Now, another popular technology I believe that ties well with API is Azure Functions, right?
Mhm.
I don't want us to assume again, Brian. So what is Azure Functions and what relationship does the function have with an API?
Awesome. Great question. So Azure Functions is again another standalone Azure platform service. So I can use Azure Functions and I don't even need API management at all. What Azure Functions is going to do is allow me to write simple units of work that I can deploy and run from either an HTTP trigger, which would be like an API endpoint, or I can actually do scheduling, such as like a Windows service would run on a timer. We can do code and an Azure function that can be scheduled on that kind of a trigger. But you can also use webhooks or events within Azure itself. So behind the scenes in Azure, there's a thing called the Azure Event Grid or Azure Event Hub. And Event Hub is usually used to stream in lots of metrics from big data or from IoT devices. You would have an IoT hub, which is a subset of Event Hub. But ultimately, those data can be filtered, or we can be using that data. And Event Grid itself is kind of for one-off events. So maybe somebody triggered something, either um, they sent something in through a website, and we then sent a message to the Event Grid ultimately that said, "Hey, trigger this Azure function." There's You can actually trigger it from external things as well, like Twilio. So there's other ways to trigger things. But ultimately, once you trigger it, then it's going to have on the Azure function itself, the ability to communicate with other Azure services. So you can do things like get data from Cosmos DB or get data from Azure Storage and then use it. So maybe an Azure function might exist that allows a user to quickly upload a function, or excuse me, upload an Excel sheet into storage. And when that hits the storage account, it sends an event to the function that says, hey, we have the Excel sheet that we were looking for, or the CSV that we were looking for from our client. Let's run this Azure function to actually parse out all the data from that Excel sheet, and then we can, manipulate it with code and send it on either to email or to a Cosmos or to another storage account or even to a message bus or whatever we need to do to trigger the next piece of the puzzle. So the cool thing is they're simple units of work. They execute usually very small execution times. Originally, we were under 5 minutes for all execution times, but now there's durable functions, which is a whole nother beast. But yeah, so it's a great way to write some code, typically stateless, that you would want to keep small units of work that you can take those pieces of work out of your monolithic processes and kind of have that nice little easily deployable simple unit of work.
Oh, thank you.
Hmm.
I'm sure some students might be listening in right now and they're not so used to Azure, and they're
Sure.
probably wondering, I code Java or I do Python. So, do you want to tell us what kind of programming languages now can we use with Azure Functions? Can we use to code an Azure
Oh, absolutely. I'm just going to say all the good ones. So if your language is a good one, you likely can use it. Now that being said, there, obviously there's a couple that don't really work, but yes, Java, Python, of course, C#.NET is kind of our bread and butter in the .NET world, but it's very similar to Java. So if you're used to Java, you'd be able to write Azure Functions right away. Python, the same thing. You can actually write PowerShell scripts as well and have them execute, or PowerShell essentially code, have them execute inside of an Azure Function context as well. So
Okay.
all kinds of options available for you there.
Okay, okay. Just to help us appreciate this better, right? For those people also joining us online, is there something? Do you mind? Is there something you can walk us through quickly under, say, less than 5 minutes, just for
Okay,
us to see, be able to connect the dots really well? What that
sure, sure. Would you like me to share my screen or? Um,
Yes, please go ahead.
sure. Okay. All
And
right.
please
So
remember to talk us through it. Remember, it's a radio station,
yeah, so this will be interesting because I know um,
right?
people who are watching it online are gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what he's talking about." People on the radio are gonna be like, "What? He said this. Click on this. Click on that. Click on this." Right? So I will do my best. So I have a demo that I do. If you have YouTube, or if you have access to the internet to be able to watch, you can look it up on YouTube. It's usually Azure Functions API demo that I've done before. But also at GitHub, I have a repo called Simple Function App Demo. That's BL Gorman Simple Function App Demo that has all the code that I'm basically using here for that demo as well. But what it is it's just an Azure function app, and that function app has two functions. One's just a simple function that returns some data that says hello, whoever you are, and then the other one actually returns some fake data called get people. And then on top of that, I have my API instance. So within the Azure function itself is deployed, but then I have the API management service here that has all of the APIs that I was talking about earlier. And those APIs I've grouped into an API called customers, an API called public that I would give to everybody, and an API called vehicles, which is actually just a third party link for me to hit to get some data on vehicles that are available. So each one of these is an API, and they have their own products that group the different APIs together, and the products have subscriptions. And so that's how you can delegate again who gets access to what and what level of throughput you give them. And then behind the scenes here, for example, the customer's API is going to have a get function to get that basic free function, as well as a private function here that I've exposed to get the people that come from the data. So here I'm within API management, I'm on the test pane, I'm hitting the get people, get method. And when I do a test request, what happens is that actually calls the Azure function behind the scenes and then sends back my data into my response window here with just the JSON version of it. But the cool thing is that I can actually do that through Postman as well. So Postman is, of course, a program that you just use to hit endpoints. And so here again, if I did my get people on my API management, I can just send the request to it, and you can see the data is coming back just like if I was a customer. And then I end up giving a subscription key through the header to make that request possible, and that's the key that you're giving out to your clients in order to do that. So that's kind of the 50,000-foot view of everything working together. Um, we could spend an hour on each one of those things, but obviously we don't have enough time for that. So let me
Yes,
know what else I can offer up.
yes. Thank you very much for that quick walkthrough. Uh, but I want to ask a favor, Brian. So I want you to come up with, is there a practical application of
Hmm.
what she probably can relate with now on the radio, say with an Azure function? What do you think she can leverage? Which of an Azure, which Azure function do you think she can leverage to make what she's doing better?
Okay, so like something that would be useful for a business process or for the radio specific. I'm
For the radio specific.
okay. All right, so let's say that you have a library of songs and you have a bunch of songs you need to do a couple things around. Number one, you need to choose which ones you're going to play. Maybe you schedule them for, I'm going to play this song at 6:05. I'm going to play this song at 6:10. I'm going to run this commercial from 6:15 to 6:17. You have all of that, and maybe you need to plan that out. But at the basic level, you just need to be able to do a quick search and say, I need to know what songs I have, or maybe even some quick metrics around that, like, okay, I have all these songs and this one's been played 50 times today, so we probably shouldn't put that one in the program for a little while. This one's only been played 5 times. Let's bring that in. Or maybe there's some popularity metrics. What you could do is you could take an Azure function and you could wire that up with a little bit of code to basically query against your data set there that says, hey, these are all of our songs. This is the song title. This is the number of times it's been played in the last 24 hours. This is its popularity rating, whatever it might be. And then you could use that to get that data. And then in your application, using that data, you could then, drag and drop the songs into a plan. And that plan would then be laid out. And then you could even do things like have it update, say, we're planning to play this. So, metrics on like how many times it's planned to be played in the next 48 hours or something. Then you could write little functions of code that could go ahead and query specific things or get the data around those songs or, user feedback or whatever it might be that you need to make quick decisions, right? You'd be able to say, okay, I need to make a change to the program because I just got some feedback that this song is terrible, so we don't want to play it anymore. Or somebody called in and complained because they didn't like the lyrics or whatever it might be, right? So you say, okay, let's put a little note on this, and then okay, it's showing up in the plan here, here, and here. Let's change out this a little bit. So maybe that helps.
So thank you very much, Brian, for coming on the Tech Talk today. So this is how much time is going to permit us today on the show. But I'm going to leave you now with a parting word before we say goodbye. Right.
Okay.
Any last words from
Oh yeah, thanks. Once again, I'd just like to say thanks for having me, Kazeem. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here, and this was a really fun thing to do. And you asked some really great questions. So, but yeah, if anybody had any further questions, or if you want to just connect with me, reach out. BL Gorman on Twitter or Brian L. Gorman on LinkedIn. As long as you're not trying to sell me something, I'll connect with you. And we can chat about any of this in more detail, or ask me questions about any of the Azure certifications you're trying to get. Or look me up on YouTube. I have a AZ204 that I did for Opsagility a while back, and that was a really popular video that people like if you're studying for the AZ204, which is the Azure Developer Certification.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Thank you very much.
yeah.
People remember you can catch up on this particular episode and the previous episode of the Tech Talk on YouTube. There is the Tech Talk with Kazeem on YouTube. And please, if you haven't subscribed, please do so already and let the others know about it as well. So let's continue to keep safe and let's do this again another